Welcome to Headline Hunting. I'm your host, Joe Ferraro, and this week I'm joined by Mike Bond. Mike, some incredible headlines this week, and we will kick things off at this very moment with Jose Aldo, a rib injury. We don't know if he is competing at UFC 189. Should he compete? Should he not compete? We don't know the severity of the injury. Your thoughts right now?
Well, as far as what we know, he does have the rib injury. That's confirmed. So it's just a matter of, is it a clean break? Is it, a hairline fracture type thing? We don't really know the complete extent of it. Apparently, he's going to get a second opinion from the doctor today, Wednesday. So we should find out more very soon. But as of right now, I mean, who wants to see this fight when Aldo's not at 100%? We've been having this whole build-up for so long, everything back and forth, that it'd just be a disappointment knowing that he'd be going into the cage. I know a lot of these guys fight when they're not 100%, but it's very public knowledge. Everyone knows. Conor knows. It just changes the entire complexion of the fight. And me personally, I don't want to see it if he's not as close to 100% as he possibly can be, especially now that it's out there. It just kind of blows up the whole thing.
So what about Conor McGregor? Should he continue fighting on this card? Should he wait until October, which is the news that we heard from Andre Pedneris, that perhaps if Jose is out, he will return in the final quarter of this year? Should Conor fight somebody else, or should he wait?
It's a tough situation because I was in Las Vegas for UFC 187 in May when Dana White and the UFC brought the media members into a room and they showed us the commercial and the event previews that they put together to promote this fight. And Dana was very explicit that they spent an incredible amount of money putting all this production together to, promo materials to prepare for this fight. And he jokes saying, we need 1 million pay-per-view buys to even break even on this, et cetera, et cetera. So, if they don't have the fight and they have Conor fight someone else, they're really risking all of that. And it's also another thing on McGregor's side. Think of all the money he's put into this training camp. He is renting the mansion, the Mac mansion in Las Vegas. He's flying out all his teammates. He's, feeding all of them, etc. It's a tough situation. If you're McGregor, maybe you feel you've invested so much into this date, into this fight, that you should go ahead with it and you should fight, whoever they can put you in or put in there with you. But from the UFC's perspective, you have all this promotion for the fight ready to go. It's just, how do you risk that by putting, Conor in there against a FRANKIE, EDGAR, a Chad Mendes, one of those guys? It's a huge, huge risk.
And that's my next question. I mean, the risk is absolutely huge for a guy like Conor McGregor, but when you're the best in the world, or you believe you're the best in the world, you should fight anyone. But it's a huge risk if you take on a guy like FRANKIE, EDGAR or Chad Mendes, the other top contenders in this division. He loses. If Conor McGregor were to lose, that big fight is probably gone or a long time from happening again.
Yeah, and it's completely different styles. It's not like we're talking about another striker, another Muay Thai specialist that they could throw in there with Conor McGregor, and it's like, okay, you can make this work. It's not a huge change in styles, but these guys are completely different fighters than Jose Aldo. They'd have a completely different approach. They'd be looking to take the fight to the ground and test his wrestling, which Mendes and EDGAR have said countless times that they would do if they fight Conor McGregor. So it's a tough situation. Do you put him in there against someone with a completely different style and just cross your fingers that he comes out on top because he's had a full training camp and all these things? There's a lot of risk reward there, and I don't know what Conor, what the UFC, what everyone thinks is the best decision. I don't really feel like there is a best decision at this point. It's just a complete mess.
Absolutely. I don't think there's going to be a best decision, but one decision I wish they would put together some way, somehow, and I know it can become a reality, but there's lots of work for Joanna Jedrzejczyk to do in her division, but lots of talk of a potential fantasy super fight. Who would win between Ronda Rousey and Joanna Jedrzejczyk? Joanna's striking is world-class, world champion, but Ronda Rousey's grappling and clinch game and submission game is second to none. If these two in a fantasy world, Mike, I know we're talking what-ifs here, if they would be put together in the octagon, who would you give the edge to?
So imagine this fight, if we're just, playing fantasy here, this fight takes place at 125 or something like that. I think you have to favor Ronda Rousey pretty heavily at this point. I think Ronda is a more capable striker than probably anyone at 115 right now, or a very vast majority. So I think she'd be able to hold her own on the feet against Joanna. And then, once Ronda grabs anyone and takes them to the ground, she's going to have a serious advantage. And it's kind of her world at this point. So if we're just judging, we haven't seen enough of Joanna at this point to really make her a favorite, to get a full grasp on how this fight would go down. I think we need to see her, on the ground in some trouble, see what her scrambling abilities are like, what her submission defense is like, before we could really even give her a hope of being able to hang with Ronda on the ground. Ronda's size advantage, her strength, her technique, just everything she has going for her on the ground. I think you have to make her a favorite in that fight, and probably a pretty heavy one at this point. Although Joanna's obviously very young, we don't know everything about her game at this point, and she could surprise us. But right now, it's one of those things. If Ronda Rousey gets it to the ground with pretty much anyone, not just Joanna, she is going to have a serious chance of winning the fight.
And speaking of surprising news, and for some of us that have been following this for a long time, it's not really that surprising. It was eventually going to happen. A new era in mixed martial arts, or at least combat sports, with the California State Athletic Commission suspending Shlemenko for 3 years and fining him heavily, overturning his knockout victory. This is the new era, Mike. Do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? 3 years is a huge suspension. In essence, it's pretty much a career killer.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's one of those things that, we want to say these guys should be punished for cheating, all these things. Shlemenko's TE ratio was 50-1, which is just mind-boggling. The legal limit, I believe, is 4-1. So it was very excessive cheating. It was, what they kind of have defined in these new rules, if it's like malicious circumstances, those kind of things. This seems like the perfect candidate for that, but God, just 3 years is unbelievable. You look at like the other sports, I believe the NFL for steroid tests, it's the first offense is, I believe, 6 games without pay. Second offense is 10 games without pay. It's a completely different thing. And just the fact that these commissions can go in there and really set up these new rules and basically make it whatever they want, with no, NFLPA that they're bargaining with to really lay down what these punishments should be. It seems kind of unfair in a way. They can just, Shlemenko's positive test came before any of these rules were put into place, the tighter restrictions, and now he's basically being punished for stuff that wasn't in play when he actually tested positive. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it right. I want to see cheaters punished as much as anyone, but 3 years, it seems crazy just for any sport, any fine. It's a massive part of his career, and you have to wonder what this guy's going to do for the next 3 years, and he pretty much has to make massive changes to his life just because of this one mistake.
Well, listen, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it, Mike. All the best to you. I look forward to having you back on here in Headline Hunting.
Thanks, Joe.